Now
And
you're
now,
now you're in editing mode, so just swap it over like you did during our pre-webinar meeting to the actual presentation. Whatever you did this morning worked great.
okay, how are we doing now?
Still in edit mode. Perfect. Yes, that's it right there. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. We're still looking okay?
Yes, looks great.
Okay.
You sound good too.
Okay.
All right. Now, so a little bit about CST. We've been in business for 21 years, and we provide international trip support services to wide range of customers flying a wide range of aircraft. So we have consequently a lot of different services depending upon the needs of the mission and the budget. So we do a lot of different things for different people. We also collaborate with associations, many of which you are aware of. Also, a lot of the type aircraft groups, Citation, Pilatus, Phenom, etc. Ops Group, they provide a lot of very, very useful international information. Flightplan.com, we do all of their international. Yvonne and I have been collaborating with CBP for a long time, 17 years. And of course, the FAA safety team. Now, one of the big misconceptions that a lot of pilots we talk to have is that, well, since I'm US registered or I'm Canadian registered, I only need to worry and follow my regulations. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And our very own regs tell us that once we're out of the US, we need to comply with the regulations of the foreign countries that we overfly or fly to. And that's why presentations like this can be very helpful to kind of bring everybody up to date, because just like regulations change stateside, they change in the international arena as well. So today, here are the topics that we're going to cover to help you in the planning and execution of a trip to Mexico. Now, whenever our customers sign up with us, the very, very first thing that we do is Yvonne's team will review the documents and the equipment of the aircraft to make sure that they're in compliance. So I'm going to pass the presentation over to Yvonne and let her walk us through the different documents and requirements.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rick. Talking about the general documents that crew and passenger needs to have on board and for every international flight, first is to have a valid passport. Most of the country requires that the expiration date of the passport be at least 6 months beyond the day of the flight. So we recommend also that you have 2 blank pages. So this will be required for some of the authorities. Passport cards, we have had this situation and these cards are not accepted for flights. So please don't use these for your flights.
Yeah, that usually doesn't end very well.
Yes. US and Canadian citizens usually do not require visa if they are planning a trip to the most of the country, to most of the countries in the Western Hemisphere. However, if you are planning to travel with friends, relatives that are not US citizens, we recommend that you check the visa requirements for the foreign countries that you are planning to visit. Talking about this visa waiver, unless you are a signatory carrier with CBP, you cannot carry citizens from visa waiver countries on a private flight and into the US. So of course there are specific situations where this can be allowed. However, you need to check this before with CBP.
Yeah, very, very narrow exceptions.
Yes. If a minor will be traveling and well, without both of the parents, then the non-traveling parent need to present and prepare a notarized letter. So the minor can travel to a foreign country. You can find actually a template on our CST member website.
And you actually had a dual citizen travel to Mexico, and Mexico for a minor
Yes.
Mexican citizen leaving Mexico, there's another form you have to have. So the important thing is, yeah, if both parents aren't going, you better check.
Always that you have a minor, yes, you need to check that. Well, talking about pets, we have so many flights with pets, and it's really important that you check the regulation that the foreign country has, not only for the entry, also for the exit. And talking about the US, CDC and APIS has been, has new restrictions, in the last months and last year. They have been new regulation for the entry of pets coming from certain foreign countries. So this is important to be aware, and also to take in consideration that even if the pet was originated in the US, you need to check all these things.
Big misconception that, well, I brought my dog from Minnesota.
Yes, so
The
I will
dog
be
will know.
okay.
The minute it lands in a foreign country, that becomes its country of origin.
Yes, that's right. We also recommend that you check your medical insurance policy, so you confirm and check and be aware what if you are covered for this international flight. Okay, if you are planning to take items of value with you, such as camera equipment, electronic guns, jewelry, or any item that can be considered durable or an importation by US Customs, then we recommend that you present yourself along with this item and complete the form 4457 with US Customs. In this way, this form will prove that this item was with you when you leave the country.
Yeah.
Some ports will require you to fill the form 6059B, but it will depend on the port.
Yep.
Of course, you need to present for the exit and re-entry of the country an electronic advanced passenger information system, also known as an EAPIS. And it's important that you consider that some countries that you are visiting, probably they have their own APIS system.
And Mexico does.
Mexico, for example. Talking about the aircraft documents, each person acting as a crew member must have an airman certificate, also known as a pilot license. It should be private or better. It must have the English proficient endorsement on the back of your license. If by any reason your license does not have this endorsement, you can follow the easy and quick steps that the FAA has, so you can receive yours.
Request a new one and
Yes.
be on it automatically.
The temporary airman certificates are good for international flights, and this will be valid for 120 days. Sport pilots are not allowed for international flights, and you must have also a valid medical certificate. Also, it's important that you know that some countries, in this case, some airports in Mexico, will require that your medical certificate class match with your airman certificate, regardless of what privileges you are performing on that trip. Basic med is not suitable substitution of your medical certificate. The only country that honor this document is the Bahamas. So in this case, for example, Mexico, they will not take this document. US regulation and the international regulation requires that at least one crew member has the restricted radio operator permit. And if you are operating a Citation 500, 560, 550, or any aircraft certified for two crew, then and acting as a single pilot exemption issued by the FAA, then you need to be aware that this waiver is not valid outside of the US unless you have a writing authorization by the foreign country.
Yeah,
and we recommend that. Yes. Also, it's important that you know that if you have a second in command on your aircraft, he needs to have the correct type rating for that.
Yeah, it's a two crew aircraft.
Of course. Also, you need to have a valid airworthiness certificate. If you have had the change on your tail number, then we recommend that you have the new airworthiness, and you can obtain this with your local FISDO.
Yeah, and by law, it's got to be done within 30 days.
Yes.
Have you ever run across someone that forgot?
It's so common, Rick. Actually, this
So
week.
not only
this
did we keep
situation-
people from getting into trouble in the international,
Yes.
we've helped keep them out of trouble domestically as well, because they forget.
Yes. And also one common question that we receive is that, well, if you can fly on your experimental aircraft outside of the US. And actually the answer is here on your experimental airworthiness certificate. This document states that you need to receive the approval of the foreign countries that you will be landing at. And also the white one says that you need to have these authorizations on board with you in case that any FAA inspector asks you for this approval.
Or the foreign inspector. And ironically, the cases we're aware of where they have actually had checked has been an FAA inspector, and that also holds for the single pilot exemption as well. So yeah, very important that you have that in writing and on board the aircraft.
Yes. Talking about registration certificate, please don't use or don't think that you can use the temporary registration certificate. Also, you can see across the document that it is not allowed or is prohibited that you use this document. We received this several times, so you can use it. However, you can use this document, Flyware, issued by the FAA, that is also named temporary registration certificate.
Those are good for 30 days usually.
Yes, 30 days. In the case that you have gone under the process of changing your tail number, as we say, we recommend that you avoid any international flight unless you have all the documents, all your documents matching with the display tail number that you have. Also, your insurance policy needs to match with this new document.
Yeah, and that's a common mistake that, okay, so you went to the FSDO, you got the airworthiness, but insurance policy, tail number, and your weight and balance.
Yes, that's here. If you are having an international flight, you need to have a radio station license for the aircraft, an aircraft flight manual, and also a weight and balance with the correct tail number and the maximum takeoff weight. Many airports in foreign country base the airport fees on the maximum takeoff weight, and this document will help to prove any doubt. Yes. Of course, that you will need a CBP decal number. It can be obtained on the DTOPS page. And this information is useful also because when you submit your EAPs for the ones that you leave and ones that you back, you need to put this information on your EAPs manifest. The sticker also need to be placed on your aircraft, and the decal number will be good for the entire calendar year. So if you are planning to fly, for example, on the 2026, on the first month, it's a good time for now obtain the new one. Well, if you are entering the US from a country or from a place that CBP considers south of the US, and you want to overflight one of the 32 CBP designated airports, then you will need a border overflight exemption. It will be valid for 3 years, and this is a document that you really need to have. Well, of course, you need an insurance policy. It's important that you have the entire policy with you on board, and it has been printed in color.
Yep.
Once that you receive your document or this document from your insurance company, you need to review some information. That will be the tail number, of course, the policy number, the expiration, and the most important thing is the countries that you will be covered. That needs to be for the flight, for the countries that you will be overflying and landing. In case of an emergency, you need to be covered. It's important that you have suitable charts for the flight that you are planning to perform, and please have these before you leave the US. Don't expect to get these ones that you leave. And well, any aircraft that is performing an international air navigation needs to have a journey logbook. Actually, it's a requirement, an ICAO requirement.
But it's actually a ramp check item in Mexico. If you
Yes.
get ramp check, that's one of the ramp check items as in other countries that closely follow ICAO recommendations.
That's right. You need to have a noise certificate. Usually these are available on your aircraft flight manual. In the case that it is not, the FAA has issued some advisory circulars where you can find how to get or to create yours.
Create your own.
In the case that you are thinking to fly RBSM airspace, then you will need a special letter of authorization issued by the FAA where it says that you can fly RBSM airspace internationally.
Yeah, that's actually, we were told by the FAA, that's a very common penalty, cause of penalties outside of the United States is people just continue flying under Part 91 and forget they need an LOA.
Also, in the case that you are planning to fly on RMP routes, that in that case, you will need a letter of authorization for RMP 4 or 10 in the case of the Gulf or the Western Atlantic track. Well, it is really common for us to see US aircraft register to a corporation versus an individual. And this is important because some foreign civil aviation authorities may jump to the conclusion that this aircraft is performing an illegal charter flight. So in this case, we recommend that you have on board and with you a private operation letter. This letter needs to be notarized. It has been signed by the owner of the company that probably is yours. It needs to declare and specify the relation of the crew and the passengers to the owner. And it needs to say at the end, usually of the letter, that this international flight has been authorized. In this way, if the authority requests or has any question, you can show this letter. Okay, talking about equipment, a Mode C transponder is required for any international flight. ADS-B 1090 extended splitter also is important to have. And in order to cross the US 80s, you need at minimum 12-inch tall aircraft registration number on your aircraft just to comply with the regulations. And in this case, you need to make sure that you have the correct navigation database for your GPS and flight planning software. So in this case, you need to have this for all the geographic area that you are planning to fly and also the airports that you will be using. 406 megahertz ELT is also required for most of the countries. And most countries require you to carry life vest, life jackets, and life raft if your flight will go beyond the gliding distance from land.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The last week before last, I was watching a presentation somebody was giving, and they were referring to U.S. regs. Again, when you're out of the U.S., you got to comply. And most countries, it's beyond gliding distance. However, what if you have a lithium-ion battery fire? You know, there can be different situations where you may have to put that plane down regardless of the gliding distance. So I always recommend if you're going to be over water, have a life raft because that way you can cover the worst case scenario. If you've got to put it down, then you've got to put it down.
Saying that, you need to have a suitable survival equipment also on board with you. Okay, we recommend that you assume that you will not be able to find oils, fuel additives, chocks, tow bar outside of the US. It's better to have them with you so you avoid any inconvenience. Of course, if you are flying over water, we recommend handheld radios, in this case, aviation or marine. Satellite telephone is also good to have. 406 megahertz PLV also, and if you are flying over water, one that floats, it's better. Tracking devices, if you want to let your family in the office know where you are. And some of them also have the ability to send messages or emails also. Cialum sticks also are good to have. And with this, it's really important to mention something, Rick. The pilot in command is legally responsible of what happened on your flight. It is not the owner, not the passengers.
Can't
It-
blame it on your husband?
No, no, only the pilot in command. So it's important that also once that the passengers and the crew is boarding the aircraft, you check that they have their passport and sometimes the visa if they require. Because we have faced several situations where they land and they don't have the passport and they.
Have we ever had that happen?
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, yes. Also, well, this one is important for security reason. If you are using a constant wear vest, we recommend that you don't use the auto inflate feature.
Yeah, that can become really ugly inside a sinking aircraft if that thing pops. And
Yes.
inflates.
Well, that's everything about documents and equipment.
All right, let's talk about weather. Mexico is a very large country. It's got 3 coastlines, and all 3 get hurricanes. So it's very varied. You know, we've got jungles, mountains, deserts, you know, so plan obviously for your dress code, but more importantly, plan for the aviation weather as well. Rainy seasons, May to October, and the terrain can cause extreme weather. Right behind us, we have an 18,000 foot active volcano and 3 others next to it, all providing great lifting action, and we get some amazing thunderstorms. Now, where to get weather, our own Aviation Weather Center has a number of products, you know, that can be a great resource. If you're a member of our member website, we also have an international weather page as well. And for the customers at Yvonne's team, her team, we use WSI Pilot Brief. That's what we use to generate our weather briefings. It's a great resource if you're going to be doing a lot of international travel. As far as charts are concerned, the FAA publishes some IFR en route charts. L1, L2 covers Mexico. Mexico at one time published WAC charts. They haven't updated them in a long time. You can download them from our member website. And if you use that in conjunction with the L1, L2 IFR, you know, you can, it's a great resource. We also have the Mexico VFR terminal area charts. Those are also downloadable from our website. And we have those old ONC charts as well for those that, if you're really desperate for some old aeronautical charts, but in some countries, that's all there is. And of course, you have some third parties as well. Now, when you're planning your route, you need to take a number of things into consideration. First of all, airspace. Laura, we were talking about that at the beginning, where people may not realize that flying along near the US-Mexico border, you might still be talking with Houston Center and be vectored into Mexican airspace because they have letters of agreement. However, Mexico will see that you flew into their airspace and they charge for their airspace. So if you flew through it and you neither departed nor arrived at a Mexican airport, it's just like the US. It's the same methodology that the US charges for airspace as well. You fly through US airspace or Mexican airspace, and you didn't either leave from an airport in the country or land at an airport, you owe money. The Mexico, unfortunately, they don't issue invoices, and it's actually probably the most complicated process we work with. But if you have any doubts whatsoever, let us know. And if you do know that you flew through their airspace and need to pay, we do have an app on our main website where you can put in your information and it'll do all the calculations for you. And our admin team here in Mexico will take care of payment. Now, when crossing the Gulf, Yvonne mentioned the RNP4, RNP10. There are a number of RNP10 routes that cross the Gulf. Those are the ones in yellow. The difference from these, if you are a heavy metal driver out there, you can do these with single long range navigation systems. So the LOA is, I think it's BO54. Anyway, there's one for single long range, specifically for the Gulf. So bear that in mind. But if you don't have it, we still have the old Amber routes, Amber 766 and Amber 770. So no worries, you can still cross the Gulf if you're not RNP10. Just make sure you pick the right airway. Avoid terrain, and boy, Mexico's got some of it. As I told you, we got some really, really tall mountains here. So be aware as you plan your route. There's a great little place if you need to get from the east to the west. If you're down in the southern part of Mexico, I call it the Ixtepec Pass. There's a VOR Ixtepec. That's a great place to cut across if you are low altitude. If you're going to enter Mexico and you departed basically from anywhere other than the US or Canada, you must make your first landing in either Tapachula or Cozumel. This is really, really important. Failing to do that can really, really ruin your day. Okay, and there they be. Another thing to consider is airspace. Will you need any permits to get to Mexico? Well, coming from the US, it's pretty straightforward. You're going right into Mexican airspace. But if you're coming from Florida, you may be transiting through Cuban airspace. And actually, you wrote an article about Cuban airspace.
No, but
It's on our website.
it's on
One
our
of us did, we
website,
forget.
yes.
But we have an article, it's on the older article section, but it talks about Cuban airspace permitting, the airspace fees, et cetera. So if you fall into that, you might want to check on the news page, look at the older articles, but there's an article in there that talks about that. And if you're under VFR, you must stay outside of their inner ATIS, okay? You cannot go VFR inside their inner ATIS. If you need a Cuban overflight permit, we also have an app for that. It's on our main website as well. Again, and I know I'm being repetitive and it's for a reason because it is so important. If you're coming in from the south, Tapachula and Cozumel, if we want to make sure that if anything, you don't forget that one.
Yes, we received so many questions with this.
In fact, Yvonne's team has actually detected people that we know and contacted Center
Mhm.
to have the controller contact the pilot and force them to land to avoid a penalty.
Yes.
So we will do everything we can to help you, but just make sure you don't blunder into that. Always check availability of fuel. I say never turn your back on a working fuel truck. Here in Mexico, it's measured in liters. If you can find the fuel additive, it's going to be really expensive. So if you're a PRIS user, make sure you bring it. 100 LLs called Gas Avion, which is a little translation of avgas. Fluocenas Jet A, and we have prices available on our member website as well. We update those twice a month. Okay, what else? Always plan an alternate. Most airports in Mexico don't have parallel taxiways. So all it takes is one stranded aircraft on the runway to really ruin your day. So always plan an alternate. If you need the airport to be an airport of entry, then make sure, and if you need fuel, make sure your alternate can cover that. Check for any seasonal events, sporting events, whatever that could drive a lot of traffic to an airport, any restrictions. If you're crossing the Gulf under IFR, then make sure that you are aware of the RNP-10. So those are the general route planning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at US procedures for leaving and returning from to the US. And then we're going to do the same from Mexico. So let's start with the US, because most of you listening, that's probably where your trip is going to begin. And there's two general concepts we have to comply with to leave the US. One is CBP, and the other is the Air Defense Identification Zone. So let's start with departure and CBP. So to depart the US, I think it's the only country I'm aware of where you can leave from any airport. You have a grass strip in your backyard, you can leave from there. There's no restriction unless CBP tells you otherwise. As Yvonne mentioned, if you're taking, really expensive stuff, jewelry, make sure you've got your 4457. And then you must submit the EAPIS manifest that Yvonne mentioned no later than 1 hour before departure, okay? Now, not only do you need to submit it, but you need to get an email that looks like this. And Yvonne just wrote an article about this process, which is on the news page of our website. And those are free pages. You don't need to be a member. They're out there for the general good. But it talks about this email and why it's so important to read it very carefully. The Air Defense Identification Zone, there it sits. So you're going to have to go through it pretty much hard not to. And around South Florida, if you're coming from there, it's right there, really close. So make sure you know what to do. And 14 CFR parts 44, 45, and 99 are the two most important. Most pilots don't even know those exist. So what do they say? First, you've got to be on an active IFR or defense VFR flight plan. okay, active, squawking a discrete transponder code in two-way contact with air traffic, and have those 12-inch numbers that Yvonne mentioned that on the aircraft, okay? That bottom line, those are the four key things out of those parts. And what flight service has asked us to please tell everyone, flight following does not satisfy that, okay? So it's great to have flight following, don't get me wrong, but you still have to have an active, you have to have filed it, and you need to have activated it, etc. Okay. Next, before leaving the US, obviously we got to file a flight plan. It's actually in 91.703, I believe, but it is a regulation and it's required. So you've got to file a flight plan. If you're going IFR, whatever method you use today for flight plan, whatever, you can do that. That's not an issue. Do it. If you're doing DVFR, that's got to be done with flight service. So if you haven't done a VFR flight plan with flight service in a while, brush up on it before the day of departure so you can remember and know where you're going to have to call them and how. Or if you're using one of the apps like ForeFlight, you know, just be familiar with how to do that. There are remote communications outlets all along the Mexico-US border. So, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Don't forget to close your flight plan. Now, here's the trick. On a flight to Mexico, flight service really wants us to contact them as we reach the border, because basically they have no way of finding out if you arrived at your destination. So they really want us to close it, ideally when we reach the border, but most certainly once you reach your destination, okay? And they also stress canceling flight following does not close your flight plan. Two different actions, okay? So that's leaving. Returning to the US, again, we have to comply with CBP, and we need to have that decal that Yvonne talked about at the beginning. You got to have that on the aircraft. As she said, you may have to do a declaration form, a customs declaration form, possibly. And you must, here's the important thing, if you're returning from a place south, which is basically anywhere in the Western Hemisphere, except for Bermuda and Canada, you departed from any country other than those two in this hemisphere, you must make your first landing at the designated airport closest to your point of border or coastline crossing. And those are the 32 designated airports, okay? So they want you to go straight to, don't pass go, don't collect $200. They want you to go straight to the closest one. You cannot overfly one while en route to the other. And this can get you a $5,000 penalty if you try it. Now, there are 4 designated airports, and if you look at them, well, the only way to get to them is to overfly a designated airport. And I'm only the messenger here. I cannot explain that, but it is what it is. So you can also use those 4, just make sure you get the permission to land. Florida has something similar, but here we do have the document where the Miami field office said you can fly to any one of those airports and overfly any one of the other airports while en route, and we will still consider it the closest airport, okay? So you could actually come in from Mexico, go over Key West, and go all the way up to Fort Pierce. As long as you're going up the east side of Florida, you're good. Okay. As Yvonne said, if you want to land at another airport where CBP is present other than those, you will need to obtain a border overflight exemption. Takes about 30 days to get them. And the important thing is, whoever that BOE is issued to, the operator that it's issued to, you need to be sure that that's the operator you put in your EAPAS manifest submission, okay? And follow any instructions that are on there. And you can get one also, we have an app for that. You can also get it on the EAPAS portal, okay? They've now got a link there on the CBP portal, or you can use ours. All right, prior to departing a foreign country, now returning to the US, you need to submit an EAPAS manifest again, no later than 1 hour before departing the foreign country, okay? You're gonna get another email. Now, it looks similar to the first one, but it's not, it's different. And it's got very, very specific instructions. Again, Yvonne wrote the article, it's on the news page, you can get more details on that. But the key thing is make sure you read it and you follow whatever instructions are on it. And if you've been doing this for a long time, you can say, oh yeah, that's enough. They've actually changed it. It still looks like what it used to look like, but it's actually has changed. So if you haven't actually read it in a while, please do. If you're using a BOE, again, make sure it's the same operator. And this is key. And for those of you that have been flying internationally for a long time but haven't done it in a while, in addition to filing APIS, in addition to getting the email, you must also obtain permission to land from CBP at the port, okay? And bear in mind that they're gonna have specific time tolerances, plus or minus, so really, really important. When you talk to CBP, always ask for a name. There's no reason why they can't give you their name, and at a bare minimum, their initials or a badge number, but it's really important because you're supposed to get that automatic email that we're gonna show you in a second, but the key thing is when you land in the US and the officer comes out and says, who granted you permission to land? Make sure you've got something other than your charming smile to defend yourself with, okay? So you should get an email that looks like this confirming that the permission to land was granted. And it's usually going to have several attachments, one of which is the airport fact sheet, which is a very useful thing. You could get airport fact sheets on the CBP page, on their general aviation page. And if you're a CST member, we also have those on our member website as well that you can download. All right, before leaving the foreign country, file an ICAO flight plan. We always recommend when you're flying VFR, contact flight service in the US because unfortunately, oftentimes the VFR flight plan information from Mexico doesn't get to flight service. Long story there, but the bottom line is if you call them, you can give them, your flight plan information and they can record that. So if they don't get it from Mexico, they will have received it from you. Before you cross the air defense identification zone, this is so important. Unless you want your very own military air shows and to be escorted by a pair of F-16s with you at show center, you want to make sure you follow this. You need to be active flight plan, squawking a discrete code, and talking to air traffic, okay? Beware of codes. If you fly, let's say you fly through Tampico on the way up, and they have radar now in Tampico, and they give you a squawk code while you transition through their terminal control area. Make sure to go back to the code given to you by flight service. But what you really, again, unless you want to see those F-16s up close, don't go crossing squawking 1200. Oops. Once you land, go straight to where CBP told you to, and that's going to be either on the fact sheet or when you call to get permission to land. It's a good time to talk to the officer and say, where do you want me to go once I get there? Okay. Wait for the officer to come. Now, at certain ports, they will have posted signs that'll say, unload your bags and go straight into the office. Fine. If you've got an APU, if you're flying a jet and that exhaust is above 8 feet, you don't have to power it down. Okay. And you need to present whatever document. Remember, this is federal law enforcement, so they cannot just ask for passports. They can ask for medical certificate, airman certificate. These are federal law enforcement officers. And don't forget to close your flight plan. Okay. Very important. If you add substitute people on your EAPIS manifest, you need to file a new one. If you change the date, you need to file a new one. Okay. These are really important things. Permission to land must be obtained from the port, okay? Follow the instructions on the emails and any attachments. It's very important to watch that. Things have tightened up a lot over the years. Any authorization. So let's say you filed it, you got your email, and you got permission to land. And then all of a sudden, somebody says, oh, my buddy wants to come with us back. Well, now you're gonna add a new person. You have to submit a new manifest. Well, guess what? Now you got to get a new email, and now you got to re-secure permission to land with the port. So don't forget, they all go hand in hand, and the EAPIS number will be on your permission to land email. So you want to make sure you've got one that matches the very latest manifest. If you cancel a flight, you should also cancel your EAPIS manifest. So this is what a cancellation one looks like. You should receive one of those. If you're denied, if for whatever reason they say, I can't take you because of whatever reason, you'll probably get one of these emails as well. Other observations, you should never be asked to send for a private flight a general declaration. And if you are, asked to speak to
Supervisor.
supervisor. And Ivana deals with that
Yes, it's common.
quite often, but you don't want to send personally identifiable information. Always check the operating days and hours. That'll be on the fact sheet, and obviously confirm it with the officer when you get permission to land. And another misconception is that once you land, you can't open the door. Well, man, if you're in a pressurized airplane and you're in South Texas in the middle of the summer, you know, that's a pressure cooker. You can open the door. There's no regulatory reason why you can't. CBP's definition of commercial, forget the exact part. It's in part 61 where you could share expenses. That is still considered a private flight under FAA regulations, but under CBP regulations, the minute any money or any kind of compensation changes hands, that moves you into the commercial. And yes, it has happened. Transporting currency more than 10,000, it has to be declared. Other tips, IFR will help you cross the ATIS if you have any hesitation about that and you're IFR capable. That's a great way to not have to worry about it. NOTAMs, check for TFRs. Remember, VFR flight plans are handled by flight service. IFRs handled by ATC, by the FAA. And flight plans, unless they were filed through flight service to begin with, they cannot be seen by flight service. So if you file an IFR flight plan, typically flight service can't see it. Only the tower, approach, center. So it's kind of like you just think of it, they're two separate worlds. Let's jump over to Mexico now. Some things have been happening over the last 5 to 6 years. The old federales are gone. And now we have the Guardia Nacional, the National Guard. Mexican customs has changed. It's now basically run by the military. Many leadership positions in immigration are now staffed by military, as they are in civil aviation. Many Mexican airports are also being operated by the military, the administration, and now they're also selling fuel. So because of all these changes, okay, in such a short amount of time, what you should expect is that you may see a lot of variation from airport to airport because so many new people have gotten into the mix. Experimental, we talked about that already. Very touchy. If you are planning to do experimental, make sure you have talked to the civil aviation people at the airport you plan to enter to avoid any issues. Medical certificates, as Yvonne said, right now they're not being accepted in Mexico, despite AOPA having worked hard to get acceptance. That has changed. And some airports, specific airports, now want. So if you have an airline transport pilot license, they're going to want to see a first-class medical, even though you're exercising third-class privileges. It's airport specific. So again, check before you go. You do have to have liability insurance that covers you in Mexico, and it needs to have at least 300,000 liability coverage, and make sure that it's in effect for the entire time. They will want to see it upon arrival in Mexico. Okay. We do have a lot of information on our website about Mexico. So again, if you're a member. Another big change is in Mexican APIS. Now, for many years, we were able to get an exemption where you could file with an Excel template that looked like this. If you are familiar with that process, it is no more. So please do not do that. Now we must all use the AirInc Excel spreadsheet. It looks like this, and you have to file it either directly with AirInc, or you can file it with, there's going to be an email coming up here in a minute that you can actually file it yourself. So just be very careful that the AirInc spreadsheet is very sensitive to the format. So make sure you're aware of how to enter time and et cetera. You can send it, like I said, directly to this email address, but no more than 4 trips a year. 2 submissions. We had this week has been an interesting week. We go by what is legally published in the Federal Register, and we've received confirmation from Immigration Headquarters, and we've received confirmation from AirInc's Mexico team that for private aircraft, 2 submissions, one 2 hours prior, and the second upon door closure. Now, they don't know when you close the door, but you probably have cell coverage, cell data, you can do it again. But That's what we say, and we're sticking to it.
Yes.
You might also be asked to send that Excel spreadsheet to the immigration officers at a specific airport. So again, check with the airport, the FBO, whatever that you're gonna use, if that's a requirement at that airport. We also have had changes to the entry permit. Many years ago, we had the single and the multiple. Now it's called the AIU. It's the single entry authorization in English. It's valid for 180 days, and you can come and go into Mexico as many times as you want
Yes.
during the 180 days. Works like the old multiple entry permit. And Yvonne is very familiar with, now we have to provide a LOPA, which is a layout of passenger accommodation. So use your weight and balance section. You probably have a diagram like this of your aircraft. Use that, and
Some pictures.
some pictures. Some airports, they want to see a picture of your plane.
Yes.
Hey, why not? Updates, again, they can vary, and this is one of the challenges Yvonne's team faces every day. Varies from airport to airport, no?
Yes, and sometimes you will receive these once that you land,
Mhm.
and once also when you leave, leave the
Yeah,
country.
you may not get it till the day you leave.
Yes, but you need to receive that.
Yeah.
So you can leave. Mhm.
Variation includes the time that it takes. Yvonne talked about what happens if you change crew, and also how that's handled.
Yes, you need to sometimes to receive an amended, like something like an amended. Mhm.
Or get a new one. It
Yes.
really depends, or some kind of penalization. So change in crew may require to be amended. What else we got? Oh, yeah, this is, Yvonne asked that we emphasize.
Yes. Once that you receive your IU, this document needs to be on board of the aircraft. This will be part as the aircraft documents, so it has to be there and the original and complete, please, always.
Yeah, and that includes the receipt.
Yes.
So consider it, well, Mexico considers it civil aviation, that now becomes a part of the aircraft
Mhm.
document, so
Yes.
keep it on board, don't lose it. Civil aviation authorities, if you are on Part 91K,
Mhm.
or your aircraft, you have a lease back to a charter operator. Some Mexican airports are going to the FAA page where you can download the list of tail numbers associated with a Part 135 operator. Your tail numbers on that list, no matter how charming you are, no matter how many of those letters you bring that we recommend, they're gonna say you're chartered. Once charter, always chartered. So be aware of that. Family, friends are always allowed, but customs, and there's a long story here, which we don't have time for, but the pilot is typically looked at as if you are an airline pilot. And so you have no rights to bring in golf clubs, tennis rackets, scuba diving equipment, whatever. So we could give you technically you should be able to if you own the aircraft, but to make life easy, just have your family bring your things in for you. But please, what you don't want to do, and Yvonne can tell you the consequences of this, in Mexico and in other countries, just regrettably, it has happened that people have brought these on
Yes.
board. It's not good. So unless you have a burning desire to find out more about the Mexican legal system, please, please, please don't bring that. No controlled substances unless you have the prescription. Some people will take all their pills for the week and put it in a Ziploc bag. And now you show up with a bag with all these different colored pills in it. Keep those in the original container with the doctor's prescription. Vaping, we have an article on our website in the news section about this. Vaping in Mexico do not mix. So don't bring them, don't do it. Big fines, big consequences, possibly even jail. So yeah, so definitely you want to find out about that. And visa requirements, pet entry, Yvonne already talked about those. When you enter Mexico, you must make your first landing at an airport of entry, okay, an AOE. You've got to submit that Mexican APIS, follow the new guidelines, 2 hours the first one, door closure the second one. You've got to file that ICAO flight plan, okay, into Mexico. And when you cross, if you're VFR, when you cross into Mexico, by law, you are expected to contact the closest tower, approach, or center, whichever is closest. That's how they put you into their system, and then that information, your tail number and destination gets communicated. So a lot of towers and centers and places along the border where you can do that. Once you land, the tower will automatically close your flight plan if you're IFR. They will close it VFR as far as Mexico is concerned. But again, flight service will never know unless you tell them, okay? If coming from the US and the VFR, then contact flight service. They would like you to do it at the border, so they don't have to worry about you anymore. You will likely be met on the ramp by military, federal agents, dogs, you know, it's normal. You may be asked to do an inward general declaration, maybe not. You may have to complete an immigration form. Those are actually going away, but you know, some airports may still be doing it. And you may be asked to do a customs declaration form. Those are also going away. And a lot of airports will have this traffic light. You have to push a button and it'll either turn green or red. If you get green, you just go right on through. If it turns red, you get an inspection. And you may be asked to submit a cash declaration form. That's again, that $10,000 limit that they're looking for. Once you arrive into Mexico, you'll get an arrival report. Make sure it's stamped by Immigration, Customs, and Civil Aviation. You must get that single entry authorization or have brought the valid one that you got on a previous trip with you, along with the receipt. Okay, got to have that receipt, otherwise it's not valid. And the aircraft cannot be in Mexico longer than 180 days, which is the time limit of the permit. Fees. Some airports are federal, some are state, some are private. There are flat fees like the entry permit, immigration fees, and there's others, as Yvonne said at the beginning, that are based on max takeoff weight. So it really depends on the category. If you're going to use an FBO, always get a quote. Some of them can be pricey. Pay your fees before departing if you're going to fly within Mexico. Expect to have to file an ICAO flight plan form. You will have to get your flight plan approved. They're probably going to want to see your entry permit. And once you get to the destination in Mexico, park on the general aviation ramp. Don't shut down in the commercial. You become extremely unpopular. Ask for directions to the general aviation ramp. And again, you'll probably get another visit from the guys with the guns and the dogs and such. It's normal. Departing Mexico, you must depart through an airport of entry. Don't forget, we've got to submit our outbound APIS, 2 hours and a door closure. If you were given an immigration form, which is becoming increasingly rare, don't forget to surrender it. You may be asked to present an outward general declaration form. If you're going on to Central America, we highly recommend that you insist that you file one, because they're going to ask to see it when you get into Central America. And again, you may also, once again, be asked for a cash declaration form outbound, okay? And there's always fees, you know, that's aviation. There's going to be fees to be paid for passengers and such, so don't forget to do that. And you will have to file an ICAO flight plan form, whether you're going VFR or IFR, whether you're going back to the US or on into Central America, you will have to file the ICAO flight plan form. The great thing about all these new apps is they all have the ability to generate that. You'll have to transpose it onto the Mexican form, but the format is identical. So top 5 pilot mistakes US and Canadian pilots make. This comes from air traffic control, not following VFR procedures and failing to know the dimensions of the terminal control area, violating special military, prohibited, restricted airspace. So folks, make sure you've got charts and that they're valid, because unfortunately, a lot of pilots are just plowing right through restricted and prohibited airspace and getting a really unfriendly greeting once they land. Flying under VFR at night is prohibited in Mexico. Don't try it. Aviation slang. We just wrote an article, I think Grecia uploaded it today, about these mistakes. You know, don't use the correct phraseology. Using fish finder and a flash. And, you know, there's nothing worse than, you know, using unofficial slang and controllers with that English is not their primary, you put all that together and you have the recipe for a problem. Unable to report position, folks, that's how it works. They're gonna tell you, they wanna know what radial, they're gonna tell you from this VOR, what radial and DME are you? That's how they want the position reporting, because many TMAs or TCAs don't have radar. So, and they will use that also for an aircraft or two aircraft that are in opposing directions. One is in ascending, the other descending. They got to know where you are so they know where to stop, climb, stop, descent, so that you guys can pass. And if you don't get it right, let's hope you have TCAS. And also failing to get notice. Unfortunately, a lot of pilots just are not making the effort to get notices to airmen. Big complaint where they'll, blunder through something that was published, and that doesn't go well either. Okay, again, we've got a lot of country information on our member website, some tips. Be careful with third-party APISs when you're doing dual citizens.
Yes.
Yvonne's team runs it if you're like Mexican, US. Which nationality are you declaring on which? And some of these apps you can't distinguish. So you may present a Mexican passport returning to the US when you should have presented your US passport. That can lead to a penalty. So be very careful if you fall into that. Never turn your back on a working fuel truck. Bring PRIST, we talked about that. Always communicate your tail number. You're November 1234. You're not, Bonanza 1234. You're not, Citate, you're November 1234, no night VFR. And again, ICAO English, that's in the article we talked about today. The phraseology in ICAO speak is slightly different from FAA, so it doesn't hurt to brush up on that. Be familiar with airspace before your flight. Common traffic, as you get close to the border, it's going to be 122.8 typically, because it's the US influence, but legally, technically, it should be 122.5. If there's ever a doubt, transmit both in the blind till somebody answers. Make sure there's an article on our website about this, about the private airports in Mexico, the non-international airports. Read up on that, okay? Left-hand traffic prevails. Speed restrictions, if you're flying gas turbine-powered aircraft, more power to you. But bear in mind, the speed restrictions are different in Mexico than in the US, but they're published on the Jeppesen charts. Expect instrument approaches, stars, STIDs using DME arcs. Remember those? They're alive and well down here. So if you're not up to speed, you might want to brush up. Again, IFR will help you cross the border. Higher altitudes help glide and communication. You can relay information on other aircraft. Always verify. Non-towered airports, man, always overfly the runway first. Give them a good looking at. And don't depend on ATC for weather information because they don't have weather radar.
Yeah.
All right, convert liters to gallons. Temperatures and oil type. Some parts of Mexico can be really, really hot. And if you're running a lightweight oil, then you might get low oil pressure alarms when you're idling. I've seen that happen a lot. You may get $100 fee from immigration on a weekend. Shouldn't happen, but it does. Avoid peak travel dates, check NOTAMs, check them again, check them again. And if you're flying in from Central America, Tapachula and Cozumel, please, please, please. Okay, some resources real quick. We've got free information on our main news website. As I said, the news page, we have the current news, and then you'll also see we have the old pages. So there's another page that has even more articles that were written a while back. Most of those are still valid. Gracia, our marketing team, puts out stuff on social media. It's free. We have it on YouTube. It's free. And, if you want additional services, there we are. There's two Yvonne's with some dorky looking guy, but we've got a whole team of people here that are professionals that can help provide all sorts of different services, and the member website as well. We have the online services, so lots of stuff. We think $70 is a great deal in aviation. That's a rounding error. If you need to put a trip together, we do those as well for pilot groups and associations. If that's something you want to help on, we do those as well. So Laura, we ran over. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's really good information. No worries. There's a fair number of attendees wanting some clarification on acceptance of basic med in Mexico.
Okay. So many years back, AOPA obtained permission from the Mexican DGAC at the time, and the DGAC published the equivalent of an advisory circular stating that it was valid in Mexico, provided that you satisfied whatever limitations, restrictions the FAA placed on you, okay? As long as you complied in the US, you were in compliance in Mexico. The DGAC is no more, it's been replaced with the AFAC. We have a whole new government, a new political party. A lot has changed, and for reasons we cannot explain,